afraid we'd lose all this.
All right, we're recording already. Okay.
Oh yeah, come on.
Right. We got it. Okay, so we're live. We're happening. Well, I'm going to continue to ad lib for like 30 seconds or so to say, we are just so thrilled, everyone, to be welcoming you to the 9th Symphony, the 9th symphonic edition of Five Poets Breaking into Song. When we started this program, many of us together started this program, including Yang Wing and the East and West Learning Connections back in May 2021. We had no idea we were still going to be going 2 years later and be on number 9, just like right now, tonight. This is amazing. So I am George Elliott Clark. I'm going to be one of your co-hosts, and the very lovely, and not just lovely, but superbly, philosophically connected to the philosophers of the number 1 intellectual of English Canada. I want to introduce everyone right now to the Giovanna Riccio.
I'm muted. In fact, I'm speechless. Like for hyperbole. Anyway, here I am, the modest Giovanna Riccio, and welcome everybody. And thanks, Yang, for hosting us for another round. And yes, we are all delighted to be here tonight with the George Elliott Clark, the intellectual of Canada, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I won't go through it all. But do let me give you a few highlights about George, since he's the co-host here. George is, of course, a renowned scholar who teaches at the University of Toronto and teaches African Canadian Studies and Canadian literature. Aside from that, he was the 4th Poet Laureate of Toronto and the 7th Parliamentary Poet Laureate of Canada. Not to mention the fact that he's won so many awards that Heather Malik called him an award magnet. So there you go. Among his awards are, of course, the Governor General's Award and, a Rockefeller Foundation Bellagio Center Fellowship, the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Fellows Prize, the Governor General's Award for Poetry, etc., etc. And he has published at least 20 volumes of poetry and a couple of novels and academic texts of all types. So we want to welcome George with all his laurels as our host this evening. And we really want to thank the East-West Learning Connection and Shirley for designing our poster and Yang for being so generous and hosting us so many times. Thank you so very much. And we want to thank all of you, the audience, for being here, because without an audience, of course, there's no event. Right. Yes, thanks for joining us. And of course, we've got readers from all over the place. We're an international event tonight. So we want to welcome all our readers and our musicians and our composers who are all, what was the word you used, George, for them? Monster composers.
Monstrous, absolutely monstrous in terms of talent, oversized, gargantuan, scary with their ingenuity, for crying out loud. We are just so blessed to be in their company. And I just want to say once again how blessed we also are to have Ms. Riccio as the co-host, graduate of the University of Toronto, the number 12 university on the planet, by the way. I want to let everybody know that we are number 12, and it's something to be proud of, because we are the number 1 publicly funded university in the world. In the whole world, the number 1 publicly funded institution in the whole world. Take that, Oxford. Take that. All right.
Get on with the poetry now and the music.
Okay, so Giovanna is a graduate of UT, where she majored in philosophy, the author of Victorio, Lyrical Miracle Press. Strong Bread, Quattro Books, and Plastics Republic. Her poems have appeared in national and international publications and in numerous anthologies. Giovanna is the 2021 winner of the Venera Fazio Poetry Prize.
Yeah.
And you know, we'll have more to say about each other as we get on with the evening. And we are going to get on with the evening right now. I also want to say thank you to the League of Canadian Poets for helping to sponsor this event, along with East and West Learning Connections. This is the fifth time that we have partnered with East and West Learning Connections. And as Giovanna already mentioned, we are just so happy to be working with East and West Learning Connections and to have the extremely talented Shirley Chen design our posters for us. So now we are getting underway exactly right now. So it is time to introduce Vanessa Wang. And Vanessa is, I don't want to give away your age, Vanessa. I'll just say that you are superbly young and that you are thought-provoking and euphonious, and that your music reflects your interest in social justice. You're an active community songbird, contributing your performances and compositional abilities to various grassroots events. And these include performing at the City of Richmond Hill's Canada Day celebrations, the town of East Gwillimbury's Remembrance Day ceremony with a very effective song, one of the best songs about Remembrance Day that I've ever heard. Different members of provincial parliament who've shown up at various events and have been regaled by your wonderful songwriting and vocal abilities. You've also been involved in Portraits of Giving, Poetry and Song for Our Challenging Times. And of course, we performed together, you, Giovanna, and of course, the great singing bees of Aurora as well back in January. Vanessa has a great passion for music and using music to raise awareness of social issues, to celebrate multicultural communities and inspire others to give back through philanthropy and also through charitable actions. So Vanessa will be performing 2 songs for us this evening, but she's going to start us off with this song, How Do You Keep It Together? And Vanessa, as you prepare to sing that song for us, could you tell us a little bit about where it comes from? What inspired you to write this song?
Absolutely. So the origins of the song started with my English teacher. He had introduced me to the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation. They had like this Student Achievement Awards where they asked students from all across the board in Ontario to create some kind of academic or artistic creation based off of the theme, I am everything they say I am not. And I really liked the theme this year. I felt it really resonated with me because a lot of times, you know, we face critics who might doubt our abilities, or sometimes the greatest critic might be ourselves. And so this song, it is an ode to the fact that we are much more capable and we are much more talented and stronger than we may believe ourselves to be, and so others may believe ourselves to be. So this is the song I'm performing, and I had won not only the district for my school board, York Region District School Board, as well as the regional level for this song, which is called How Do You Keep It Together? And so I am super pleased to be sharing it with you all. All right. Just gonna move my chair a little up. How do you keep it together when they are berating you? How do you trust in yourself when all they do is doubt you? How do you deal with the hatred and the words you won't make make it? How do you bear truth that's spoken? Walk from a past that's so broken. Well, I've not wings to soar, but I've got feet to climb. And while these critics sleep, I'll toil in the night. Yes, I can dream and can master all of my thoughts to my aim. I can meet triumph, disaster, and I can treat them the same. Mine are the heights I have conquered, mine are the lows I have bridled, 'cause I am everything that they say I am not. How do you fight with this in you? You have for blaming yourself. How do you keep moving forward and on the past never dwell? How do you hold on to virtue? Don't let their censure hurt you. Why do you know you will achieve everything they cannot be? Well, I've not wings to soar, but I've got feet to climb. And while these critics sleep, I'll toil in the night. Yes, I can dream and can master all of my thoughts to my aim. I can meet triumph, disaster, and I can treat them the same. Mine are the heights I have conquered, mine are the lows I have bridled, 'cause I am everything that they say I am not. 'Cause I am everything that they say I am not. Thank you.
That was absolutely marvelous, Vanessa. Absolutely marvelous. And I just wanted to correct something I said earlier. We performed together, Giovanna, yourself, myself, with the Sonical Bees.
Yeah.
The Sonical Bees of Aurora. But what a great evening that was. And you have helped us inaugurate what I know is going to be a super special evening. And you'll be back later with another song for us.
Sure will.
And this is just tremendous. I'll ask Giovanna to say a few words too.
Yes. Vanessa, thank you so much for that wonderful song. And I do remember so well our night in Aurora, and you're just as impressive now as you were then. Thank you. And I know that you have big plans for your future, and I have no doubt all of them will be very, very successful for you. Congratulations.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And just one more thing I need to say. I mean, I really love those lyrics as well. Having wings to fly, to soar, and feet to climb. It's such an uplifting message in a time when we all need that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give a shout out to my late mother. I'm going to, because you got me thinking about, Vanessa, you got me thinking about how she, like all of our mothers, or most of our mothers, I better say, have been so instrumental in helping us become the people that we are, and to withstand adversity, and the adversity that your song talks about, our ability to overcome. So thank you so much for bringing us that message. It's very inspirational, very moving, and sets the tone for tonight very nicely.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you.
So our next presentation will be the poetry of Libby Shire. And I'm going to ask, Giovanna will actually be reciting the poetry of Libby Shire. And I know that Libby was a mentor for you, Giovanna. So would you like to say a few more words about her?
I would. Thank you. Thank you very much. So Libby ran a writing school for a period of time out of her apartment down on the lake there. And in the early 90s, I decided to take a course there. And that's where I met her. And she was an incredibly impressive woman. very feminist and an accomplished poet. And so we became good friends, and she was a mentor to me for a period of time. And I'll just tell you that she was born in Brooklyn in New York. Libby was educated at Sarah Lawrence College, and where she studied French and philosophy. And she held several offices in the Writers' Union of Canada, and she was the Ontario representative on the National Council from 1986 to 1988. Libby was incredibly political and was involved in all manner of social justice, and was also the Canadian Centre representative for PEN International. And she belonged to the League of Canadian Poets and to the Canadian Union of Educational Workers. And I'll just say that I had many good times with Libby. Aside from encouraging me to do my work, we had a great time as two leftists just having a good chat about all the problems of the world and what's wrong with men mostly. Being two feminists sharing our experiences. So I want to say that tragically, Libby died of cancer in 2000, far too early. So I am going to now, I'll say the other thing that Libby did was she was active in the prisons. So she would go to prisons and run writing courses and that sort of thing. So I'm going to read now 3 poems, and I'll start with 2, and then before Dee Dee plays his composition for her last poem, I will read that poem. So first I'm going to read from her book, Second Nature, and I'll read 2 poems from that. And the first poem I'm going to read of Libby's is called Your Gift, Poem to the Grown-Ups. You said we would all grow larger together, edge toward blue skies, clouded trees quiet in a field, and a very soft wind, dry and cool. You said I would know something very new someday about my hand on the page, on your face, in my hand pressed, cradling a secret space, splintered by window light. I think, that your promise was a small gift, all you had to give, full of desire for sunlight and words, a long drape of folds to disappear hollows into. I do not blame you for hiding the truth. I am touched by your little gift of lies, how you built them out of love, how there was nothing else to do. That poem just is the kind of understanding and empathy for people that I think Libby exhibited. She was very, as a teacher, she was very much of the mind that it was her job to try and understand what the poet was trying to do rather than to criticize. This poem is called Women. Women are going blind from too much data and the lean beginnings of truth, starting as the skin of a dead cactus against a surface of flesh made raw, ending somewhere far into the dark canals of children's dreams, ending somewhere near the end of the tunnel where we give up looking for the stark white light of the exit and start digging into the walls with our hands, eating through the rock of the mountain, traveling slowly toward the blue sky, traveling slowly toward the beautiful bodies of our naked children, our women and our men slithering through the long measure of stone, saintly worms, wet and subversive, traveling slowly until our bodies open suddenly like clamshells or dinosaur eggs. And in the mountain air, against the sky, we see each other with open eyes, what we really look like, what we are. And I'll now end with the poem that Dee Dee chose to compose music for. This is called The Father's Dream. The dark, cold basement in Bukovina. Soldiers, boots, black potatoes, spring mud, the sound, shh, the crack of laughter in the black wound of a soldier's open mouth, the black eye of the gun barrel against my blue eye, and the eyelid descends, a shroud for the eyeball, and my ears wait for the crack of the gun and the whoosh of my eye out the back of my head. But the only crack is the crack of laughter in the black wound of the soldier's open mouth. And the sky breaks into yellow storm clouds, bile, vomit, mucus, blood. The flesh-smelling earth sprayed in my face. And once again, I am not dead like the others who are.
Wow. That is fantastic. All the poems, and that last one especially can't help but remind us of the conflicts that are going on right now. Russia versus Ukraine, the Sudan with the warring factions there, and the strife that is happening all over the world, and the fact that the victims of that strife can then end up victimizing others, including their own children. So this evil cycle goes on, and I really like the way that Libby Shire, and through your reading, Giovanna, you bring alive the horror of the perpetual violence of these incidents. Just one more thing, and then we got to introduce them. We'll introduce Dee Dee, but I want to send a shout out and a thank you to Jacob Shire, Libby's son, who gave permission to Dee Dee to put music to this poem. He's in Winnipeg tonight. I'm not sure if he's listening in or not, but I want him to know the great honor and esteem in which we hold his late mom. And I also mentioned he's a Governor General's award-winning poet himself. And so obviously the talent of his mom also continues in Jacob. So now it is time to introduce the maestro of jazz for the entirety of North America. No, I said the entirety of North America, and even bridging onto Europe and bridging onto South America and taking hold of Australia as far away, it doesn't matter. Dee Dee Jackson is also grabbing hold of Australia and bringing it into the fold as well, waking everybody up to jazz the way it's supposed to be. And I know I got to get down to talking about your actual bio, Dee Dee, but you know, we got to give you the props here, sir. I got to do that. Coming from Ottawa and everything, it'd be like trying to talk about Justin without mentioning the fact that his father was a better prime minister. Oh, did I say that? I'm sorry. I didn't really mean to say that. Anyway, here we go. Dee Dee Jackson, Canadian-born, Ottawa. Two-time Emmy-winning composer, songwriter, producer, 5 times nominated, and a jazz for Emmy Awards, and he won twice. Jazz pianist, composer, has recorded 13 CDs of mostly original music as leader or co-leader, including 2 for the major label BMG, ranging from his Juno Award. Did I say Juno? I said Juno Award winning solo piano CD. So here's a gentleman who has 2 Emmy Awards, a Juno Award, who is just constantly demolishing everyone's standards for what they think people should aspire to, because he transcends them. He transcends those standards. Now, He's got a massive a bio. I can't read through the whole thing, but I will say that I'm so privileged that he and I worked on two operas together, both of them produced. And the first one was Kebesite, which is a completely dazzling, a multicultural festival of different kinds of song and music. And then, of course, I mentioned Pierre Trudeau already, sort of, so I'll come back to him again. We also did an opera about Pierre Trudeau, and Dee Dee was the one to do it. This is absolutely fantastic. He teaches at Brooklyn College in the Global Jazz Masters program, directs the big band there. He currently teaches media scoring in the Firestein Graduate School of Cinema. What can I say? I mean, he's based in Manhattan and directing the world in terms of music, in terms of jazz from there.
You forgot to mention that he is currently on the faculty at Jay-Z's New Rock Nation. Wow.
But Giovanna, I wanted you to come in.
Well, you overlook that. Not to mention the fact that he writes for all these television shows and all manner of things here, including Sesame Street. My goodness, Dee Dee.
Well, may we hear the song?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, and this is actually a premiere of what will be the first track from a CD that I was very fortunate to have gotten a commission from the Canada Council Concept to Realization grant giving body. I don't know what it's called, but that thing. They've given me money and making it into a thing. And but yeah, so this is the first actual track. I may tweak it a little bit, that'll be on the recording. I will say up front that I am not singing on every track. This is probably the only one I'll sing on, possibly Daedalus's Lament, Giovanna's tune as well. But other than that, I'm in the process of corralling different vocalists and intend to be going across Canada and recording in different locations and different configurations if all goes well. But I wanted to have as the goal to kind of premiere something today, especially since we had shown you this piece in the past, but not in this current incarnation. So I went to a recording studio. This is a string quartet, myself conducting, playing the piano, and editing the video and so on. And yeah, and interesting that you connected it to the war in the Ukraine, because as you'll see, it's very much dedicated to the war in the Ukraine. So let me attempt to share properly. Optimize video, optimize for sure sound, Safari, share. Going to go to full screen. We're good. And then I'll mute myself. Here we go.
Dark, cold basement in Bukovina. Soldiers' boots, black potatoes, spring mud, the sound. Shh. The crack of laughter in the black wound of a soldier's open mouth, the black eye of the gun barrel against my blue eye, the dark cold basement in Bukovina. Eyelid descends, a shroud for the eyeball, and my ears wait for the crack of the gun and the whoosh of my eye out of the back of my head. Only crack the crack of laughter in the black wound of the soldier's open mouth. And the sky breaks into yellow storm clouds. Bile, vomit, mucus, blood. The flesh-smelling earth sprayed in my face. And once again, I am not dead like the others who are. The dark, cold basement in Bukovina. Descends a shroud for the eyeball, and my ears wait for the crack of the gun and the whoosh of my eye out of the back of my head. But the only crack is the crack of laughter in the black wound of the soldier's open mouth. And the sky breaks into yellow storm clouds. Bile, vomit, mucus, blood. The flesh-smelling earth sprayed in my face. And once again, I am not dead like the others who are. The dark, cold basement in Bukovina.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Massive, massive, colossal. And a couple of things very quickly. First of all, the notorious Ezra Pound, notorious, said, poetry is news that stays news. And I think that this song really fleshes out the truth of that utterance, because here's a poem that Libby Shire wrote about World War II atrocities. And yet here we are again. Here we are again, going through it all over again, right? And the poem speaks to that. Your song speaks to that. The instrumentation is fantastic. The video, breathtaking. Wow. So before we pass the microphone back to Giovanna, who's about to recite some of her own poetry, I'm going to ask Dee Dee to comment on the CD that you have in preparation. I know you've already mentioned it, but I think that you're planning to call it the Poetry Project.
Just Poetry Project, yeah. It's got a little bit of alliteration. That's the closest to a poem that I'll ever come up with. But yeah, and it's thanks to you, George, really, and also in part to Giovanna as well for commissioning one of the pieces. But George, you commissioned 12 out of the 13 of the pieces, and so you kept me going for the last year writing these different tunes. I heard a radio interview with you recently where you had pointed out, and I hadn't even thought about this, but part of it I know was to try to just, you were both talking about this, encourage people during COVID when nobody had stuff to do. And I hadn't really thought about it, but it's true. I mean, we were all sort of stuck in front of our computers. So this was certainly a wonderful creative thing to give me the opportunity to do for myself. I'm sure James and the others also agree. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. And then I applied for the grant, and thankfully that's going to be helping to, cover recording costs to go into a studio I'm just now getting the nerve to start to kind of secure different vocalists besides, as I said, myself on maybe 2 tunes at the most. Angelique Francis, who won a Juno very recently for Best Blues Album, is going to be singing 2 of the songs. I just confirmed her a couple of days ago, although I have to work out the details, so hopefully all will go well. And there'll be some others that I'll be talking. Actually, John Lindsay Bottom, who played the Trudeau in our opera, is also confirmed to sing on some of the more classical pieces that I composed. And I have a couple of others in mind that I haven't approached yet because I'm trying to get up the nerve and only got one chance to get a yes. So I want to kind of get it all together. But yeah, so I'm very excited. It's really been a wonderful, almost liberating moment to kind of be able to pivot and really work on this stuff, and also come back to Canada more and have an excuse to shamelessly travel to Canada, to Halifax, to Toronto. I'm going to go up to Ottawa next week actually, and etc. So I'm very excited about it.
Well, thank you, Dee Dee. It's awesome, and it's been so terrific working with you, as it has been also with James, and now with Juliet and Devon Patrick in Halifax. I think the only other thing I'm going to say about all of these collaborations is that for myself, I don't believe that a poem is fully clothed. A poem is always naked until it has music. Until it has music, the poem is just stark naked out there in the world, which is okay, because we're kind of naked people, poets. On the other hand, we have the music. I know Javon is looking at kind of doubtful. What is he really saying here? Anyway, I'm going to stop with that kind of argument, and I'll reintroduce Giovanna, who's going to read some of her own poetry, and then we'll hear Dee Dee's rendition of one of her poems of her own.
Yes.
So as I already mentioned, Giovanna, of course, is a graduate at the University of Toronto.
Don't give it again. You've already given my bio.
Okay, but I'll just say this. I won't give it again. I'll just say this because I happen to know. This is a woman who is consistently philosophical about everything, who also teaches Buddhist meditation. So very serious. And very grounded in a sense of justice, and terrible to argue with because she's always able to find the right ways to get around whatever kind of argument you're trying to put forward, given that background in philosophy. Anyway, you'll hear her recite now, and you make up your own minds about her work. But it's really special to have you, Giovanna, this evening here with us again. And reciting your poetry.
Thank you, George. Thank you. I just want to say, I remember Dee Dee in one of his emails saying that he was afraid to ask the vocalists to join his project because he thought they might say no. But I guess he's worked up the nerve now.
Actually, I did get one no, but it was a non-Canadian. That's part of the motivation for me being more cautious about when to ask. So it wasn't me being, somehow modest or something. It is a thing where you get all invested. And it's going to be this person that's going to do the songs, and if they say no, it's like, oh man, I need a plan B. So plan B. I'm going for the other people.
I can't imagine someone saying no to you, Dee Dee. Your music is so marvelous. That poem, that last piece was so moving.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you.
Yeah, but sometimes I wonder, how do you choose your instruments? Like which instruments you're going to bring in?
It's always a question, really, not only the instrumentation, but even just the decisions I make about how I compose something or how I orchestrate something. It's just what I'm hearing basically in the next moment. Mm-hmm. So this just felt like string quartet, but I'm also very improvisational. So even as I was writing it, I was like, should I be adding drums, or am I going to do this to it or that to it? And then it sort of takes on a life of its own, and it's sort of, the question is answered just by listening to the end result.
That's just
the process. It's very kind of an open, creative process. Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah, you share that with poets, who just sort of hear a rhythm, right?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, before I forget, I just to put a button on the last video, I wanted to thank my daughter, Sun Jackson, who's only 14 years old, and she came out, and she's an aspiring singer-songwriter, and she came out to the studio with me. And so some of those camera angles, the ones that were especially moving, she filmed for me.
Wow.
For that, so.
Wow. Well, congratulations to her too.
Yay, Sun is downstairs watching probably. Yay. Okay, I had to do that. I wanted to do that.
Great.
Continue. I'm sorry.
So, okay, for my reading here, I'm going to actually read a poem I wrote for Libby Shire. Since we just featured her, I wrote this poem when she and I were hanging out together. It's called Dear Libby. I'll just say that her name, Libby, means love, but it also reminded me of the word loba, which means wolf. Dear Libby, I want to call you Lib because it unleashes Liba, your foremother name that means love. Or Lupa, my ancestor she-wolf who suckled the Roman Empire, built on Loba, the wolf goddess. I think of Lippy, those lippy verses you've written on a woman's secret body, the pudendum's infamy, the labia and clitoris hidden in libidinal luminars in anatomy texts and dictionaries. I hear you questioning psychology, and your virile lines feel no need to curve into discrete parentheses. What is the word for female sexual virility anyway? You've tossed my favorite lines out of my chicken soup, and sometimes you want to chuck me out of my poems, but you've taught me to face images head on, to borrow eyes when mine reflect a certain insufficient vision. And if the image is a prelude to naming, your imagination didn't turn away from taboos and signs warning no women allowed. Instead, you sat up all night under that lip of moon, a she-wolf scribe lobbing poems at absence. I like the blood in your voice, the clarity and rest I find there, the noisy love in your scimitar tongue when it rises against wrongs wounding us all. Wolfwoman Libby, brave poet. And now I would like to read a sassy little poem that I've written here. It's called Between the Covers. I'm not sure I should be writing this. Maybe I should have called instead. Poetry is an oral art after all. What I want to say is I've been obsessing, wondering if you really care about us. My poetics have been looking for a meaningful relationship for years, and I'm still not certain about your level of interest. Sure, you sometimes gaze deeply into those inspired opening phrases that I anguish over. And from time to time, you hang on my every word because I wowed you with a long, leggy line or a low-cut stanza revealed my caesura. Sometimes my voice feels too one-sided, like I'm in a dramatic monologue without much feedback. Despite adjusting my verses, taking it up to a haiku, letting it down to epic style, and asking myself, should my theme be blunt or layered? It's always the quick read with you. Do I spend too much time setting the mood or creating suggestive illusions? Because I've been careful not to overdo it. There's nothing worse than becoming a pathetic fallacy. Not to beat a dead horse, but there's also the matter of attention to basics, lacy cuts that make for transparent meaning, internal rhymes so subtle they need a slow read to fully peak. Finally, there's the fit form I keep inside all that free verse. How about staying between the covers a little longer? And now I'm going to read the poem that Dee Dee has put to music. This is called A Pavane for Georgie. It's for George, who is my delightful partner and very lively, hard to keep up with. So a pavane is actually a medieval dance, in, I believe, Choo-choo time, and it was danced a lot at the British court. I just saw it referred to in some series I was watching on Catherine of Aragon, and she didn't know how to dance the British dance. And they said, oh, it's like a pavane. I think it was at the French court. It was very popular at the French court as well. So this is a pavane for Georgie. And it's after a poem by William J. Smith, who wrote a wonderful poem that I read when I was a school librarian called A Pavane for the Nursery. So this is for George. Let me step stately, wrap you in sable-lined tunes. We'll dance until music runs out of blue moons. And I'll love you till gold kneads into bread, and all the world's hungry are rose-rich and well-fed. Let me kiss your eyes softly as down. I'll love you till cops decline to crack crowns. I'll love you till downpours refuse to be wet, till coppery bed frames bear degree from our sweat. I'll love you till sidewalks cement to abstraction, and great Buddhist masters succumb to distraction. Let me lay down beside you in paradise lost. I'll love you till tongues are no longer word glossed. And I'll love you as I conjugate into you, and we age an ink distilled from the true. And I'll love you till poetry loses its troubadour Clark, and beauty slips into morning, and stars pulse to dark. Thank you.
Oh, well, here I am. Okay.
I don't really have much to say except wow. Oh, and thank you, my sweetheart. That was amazing. Woo! Wow. All right. Yeah, I am speechless myself. Oh, beautiful, beautiful, Giovanna. Beautiful poem. Beautiful. And now, Dee Dee, we need to hear. I know I have heard already, but I know. All right, please take it away.
All right. Okay. So this one I kind of edited it together already. It's me performing it again, but again for the CD, it will be a different singer, most likely. Somebody who will remain nameless for now that I have in mind and that actually inspired me in terms of the style of the song that I wrote here. But yeah, let me just play it for you and then come back. So this is a premiere, not premiere. Ooh. Let's see, optimize, share, full screen. Okay.
Let me step courtly, wrap you in sable-lined tunes. We'll dance until music runs out of blue moons, and I'll love you till gold it kneads into bread, and all the world's hungry are rose rich and well fed. Let me kiss your eyes softly as down. I'll love you till cups they decline to crack crowns. I'll love you till downpours decline to be wet, to coppery bed frames verdigris from our sweat. Da you in paradise lost. I'll love you till tongues, yes, till tongues are no longer word lost. I'll love you till sidewalks submit to abstraction, and great Buddhist masters succumb to distraction. I'll love you as I conjugate into you, and we age and ink distilled from times true. And I'll love you till poetry loses its troubadour clark, and beauty slips into morning, and stars pulse to
That's just so stunning. I can't tell you. It's so soulful,
Well, thank you.
joyous, right? And wow, layered, just gorgeous. Blew me away. Just
Well, I'm glad that you like it. So,
Yeah. Oh,
I
I
appreciate
love it. I love it. Just it.
Thank you. Well, lovely lyrics, and I don't know if we've mentioned this, but George actually sends an assortment of poems generally for each of the poets that we choose from for a given song. So it allows us the luxury of being able to choose the one that we think is most settable. Although actually in this case you did want this specific one, come to think of it, so that isn't the case. But it was perfect because it was rhyming and it had such a playful and joyous and sort of celebratory vibe. So it kind of lent itself to me to that sort of treatment. And plus, I wanted that vibe on the CD too. The singer who sings the song, who sings in that style, and hopefully I'll get that person on the album. And
It's so gorgeous. It's joyous and jazzy and just celebratory. I love it. Just
thank you.
I have to say as well that in thinking about Giovanna's poetry, as we just heard, the three pieces, including Pavon for Georgie, what is, for me, what is always most distinctive about Giovanna's work is that she just has this natural affinity for le mot juste, the right word at the right time in the right context, always. It's a remarkable gift that you have, Giovanna, and I think that this song, this poem, is just another example of your ability to do almost anything that you decide to do in poetry, and it's just a remarkable gift, and to hear it transmogrified. That's the word I got to use, transmogrified, in the way that you, Dee Dee, have done it. It's just amazing. I want to hear it blasting out of every transistor. I want to hear it blasting out of every streaming service. Right? I mean, that's the idea now, at least for me.
Thank you.
let's just say that I failed a lot. But and trying to write this and trying to write that. So I'm not sure that I could pull off everything I want to do, but thank you for saying so. Right. And le mot juste takes a long time.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you both.
Yeah. I'm very happy that another of your songs is also going to be on the album.
Yeah, wow. And you did such a wonderful job with Daedalus' Lament. That is a song that I just want to cry when I hear it.
Oh, thank you. Beautiful lyrics.
Yeah.
Very touching.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Yeah, very poignant and affecting. So
let's move on and give some other poets a chance.
yeah, okay. We are Thank you again, Dee Dee. That's fantastic. Okay, so we are moving on in our program, and up next, we're going to have the most amazing, fabulous composer, James Rolfe, with whom I've also been very privileged to work on an opera, the very first one for which I wrote the libretto for, Beatrice Chansey. But we're also going to be hearing the poetry of Gwendolyn McEwen, as well, that James has written music for, and of course the wonderful Montreal-based poet Stephen Morrissey. And I'm going to start, I guess, by reading some of Gwendolyn McEwen's poetry myself, and then I'll introduce officially James to everyone. And then we'll hear, by the way, James, which poem is it that you're doing? I don't know.
It is Water.
It is, okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right. So I'll just read a few pieces, but I got to tell you a little bit about Gwendolyn McEwen, and let me get my light turned on here. Let there be light. Let there be some enlightenment. All right. Yeah, that's a little bit better now. That night is coming down here. All right, so I hope that's not too bright, but let me get to the point here. Gwendolyn McEwen, born in Toronto, Ontario. Her mother was often in and out of mental health institutions. Her dad was afflicted with alcoholism, and all of that helps to, I think, explain how she became kind of mystical and kind of a very quiet, thoughtful poet, interested in magic, interested in spells. I mean, poets are all about words, but Gwendolyn McEwen, she was about the letter, not just the word, the letter. She loved script. She loved alphabets. She loved Hebraic characters. She loved Arabic script. She studied Egyptian hieroglyphics. She liked letters. She liked the fact that letters for her were like kind of entree to magic, to the divine, right? Also Greek. She was also in Greek letters and so on, studied the Greek alphabet. So the idea of the letter, of alphabets being the key to mythology, to magic, was very important for her. Another thing that's striking about Gwendolyn McEwen is that she's one of the few Canadian poets, I mean major Canadian poets, who never studied at a university. She went straight out of high school to being a poet. She said that. She said, I'm going to be a poet. That's why, she just leaves high school. She said, I'm going to be a poet. You can be a construction worker, you can be a lawyer, but I'm going to be a poet. A special person that is needed to say something like that. And I think Giovanna wanted to mention a word or two about Gwendolyn as well before I read some poems. So Giovanna.
I wanted to mention her breadth, how she just tried so many she tried different languages, but also just the fact that she, in her writing, she just took on so many different subjects. But I will say that I have a terrible regret about Gwendolyn McEwen, because she was poet in residence at U of T when I was studying there. And I was also writing poetry. And I was working on a long poem, Vittorio. And I liked that poem. It was influenced by Yanis Ritsos, who she also liked, the Greek poet. And I phoned her and she sounded so delighted. She said, come over and see me. And I chickened out. I just didn't have the confidence. And when I heard she died, right, tragically, I just remember feeling just so much remorse and regret that I didn't go to see her. Anyway, she's a marvelous poet and I love her work. Carry on.
You remind me of one of the great moments for me as a young poet. 40 years ago, exactly 40 years ago, 1983, I was at the Free Times Cafe, and I ended up here in Toronto. I ended up sharing a table with Gwendolyn McEwen and Dorothy Livesay. And each of us had a beer on that table. I can tell you, and, you know, as a poet is just starting out, to be sitting at that table. Gwendolyn McEwen was sitting beside me. That was wild. But anyway, I'll just read a couple of poems and then introduce James and hear the song. All right. So the first poem I'd like to read is The Story of a Stone, Gwendolyn McEwen. There is a stone in the blue fields of midnight. And finally, the stone is its own story. The stone will always tell you nothing about itself. What lives inside of the stone? Miracles, strange light. The stone is a superior star. It invents itself, makes history, pursues itself down the same hill forever, or just lies there being a stone. I have been sitting here for 3 hours under this handsome tree, trying to get blood out of this stone, but it lies there contemplating itself in a state of perfect bliss. The sky abounds with silence, and everything is proceeding slowly, very surely, somewhere. And I forgot to add earlier that the book I'm reading from is the T.E. Lawrence poems. So that poem is in the voice of Gwendolyn McEwen. Sorry, in the voice of that's Gwendolyn McEwen writing in the voice of T.E. Lawrence, Lawrence of Arabia, as he's probably better known as. And before I read Water, I'll just read her very brief foreword to this book. So this is what she says in the foreword to the T.E. Lawrence poems. 1982 is when it came out. But she says, in 1962, I was staying in a hotel in Tiberias, Israel. The tall, white-haired proprietor invited me downstairs one evening and served me syrupy tea and a plate of fruit. He showed me a series of old sepia tone photographs which lined the walls, photographs of blurred riders on camels riding to the left into some uncharted desert just beyond the door. Some of them were signed. "It's Lawrence, isn't it?" I asked, walking up to one. "Yes," said my host, offering me a huge section of an orange. "I rode with him once, a long time ago. I see you always carry a pen and paper to write things down. I thought you'd be interested. I thought you'd like to know." These poems were written, Gwendolyn McEwen writes, some 20 years later, 1982. And now I will read Water, which I was privileged to hear her read in 1982, 1983, at the Harborfront Reading Series. It's one of the great memories I have of my first real years in Toronto back in the early 80s. So here it is. She would read it I think in a very mystical way that I probably am not going to be able to match. I do think it's a very, very great poem, and I'm very happy that James also chose this poem to write music for or to score. And the title is so simple. It's the first poem in the book. The title is Water. When you think of it, water is everything. Or rather, water ventures into everything and becomes everything. It has all tastes and moods imaginable. Water is history, and the end of the world is water also. I have tasted water from London to Miranshah. In France, it tasted of crusaders' breastplates, swords, and tunnels of rings on ladies' fingers. In the springs of Lebanon, water had no color and was therefore all colors. outside of Damascus, it disguised itself as snow and let itself be chopped and spooned into the stunned red grapes of summer. For years, I have defended water, even though I am told there are other drinks. Water will never lie to you, even when it insinuates itself into someone else's territory. Water has style. Water has conscience and no shame. Water thrives on water, is self-quenching. It often tastes of brine and ammonia, and always knows its way back home. When you want to travel very far, do as the Bedouin do. Drink to overflowing when you can, and then go sparingly between wells. As we prepare to hear the song, which Dee Dee Jackson had, as James Roth has composed, as we continue with the program, I just want to say a shout out to David McKinnon for giving James permission to make a song, the score of the song of Water. And now I need to say a little bit more about James Roth. His music has been commissioned and performed by ensembles, orchestras, choirs, and opera companies in Canada and internationally, and recognized with a Guggenheim Fellowship, a Jules Leger Prize, and Dora and Juno Award nominations. His forthcoming CD, also based on these commissions and the 5 poets breaking into song, is entitled Pandemic Songbook, and I know is already one of the greatest artistic productions to come out of this age of COVID, which actually dispels COVID, gets rid of it magically, completely, just extirpates it utterly through the power of song and music. That is the strength and the genius of James Roth, for crying out loud. So it's based on the songs that I've commissioned, that he's also come to. It's an amazing CD already. And of course, I'm very happy to once again say that I collaborated with James to produce our highly acclaimed opera, first Canadian opera shown on CBC TV in 30 years, Beatrice Chancey. And James is going to be accompanied in his singing of McEwen's poem, which he has scored, by his fabulous composer wife, Juliet Palmer. And we'll be hearing more from her, and we'll be introducing her officially in a moment. So James Roth, please take the floor, take the stage.
Thank you, George. You're very kind. My grandfather would have been proud. He really wanted me to go into medicine, and had he known I would have cured COVID with music, I think he'd be very proud. Let's just sing the song, and then if we wish, you can talk about it. Here we are, Water by Gwendolyn McEwen. When you think of it, water is everything. Or rather, water ventures into everything and becomes everything. It has all tastes and moods imaginable. Water has history, and the end of the world is water also. I have tasted water from London to Marancha. In France it tasted of crusaders' breastplates, swords, and tunnels of rings on ladies' fingers. In the springs of Lebanon, water had no color, and was therefore all colors. Outside of Damascus, it disguised itself as snow and let itself be chopped and spooned onto the stunned red grapes of summer. For years I have defended water, even though I am told there are other drinks. Water will never lie to you, even when it insinuates itself into someone else's territory. Water has style. Water has no conscience and no shame. Water thrives on water, is self-quenching. It often tastes of brine and ammonia, and always knows its way back home. When you want to travel very far, do as the Bedouins do. Drink to overflowing when you can, and then go sparingly between wells.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Wow. James, how did you find the music for this poem? I mean, it's the notes are sparing, but every single one is so telling about desire and thirst.
You know, it's actually a really tough thing to get your way into, in the sense these words are so natural and they flow so beautifully that the music for me has to be quite simple and straightforward. I'm not going to layer on a ton of notes. So I think there's a sort of conversational quality about the words that I wanted to put into the music. So it's sort of a little bit of a playful back and forth between the voice and the piano, for example. And then the rhythm, it just flows. I mean, I really love what you said. I didn't realize that Gwendolyn McEwen was so keyed into letters, the script in particular. And it makes complete sense to me because there's a mystical aspect to what she does, which has a lot to do with she's seeking enchantment to cast a spell. And I think her words really go to the heart of the mystery that lies inside of people and things. So really, I didn't want the music to do anything that to wave its arms too much. It just needed to do what it needed to do, simply and to the point.
You really captured that.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's sort of like the the adjective Kabbalistic comes to mind. In terms of that particular mystical tradition involving script, and something that she was really teaching. I mean, she was, in a sense. I mean, you've also composed music for poetry by Irving Layton. And I think of Gwendolyn McEwen and Irving Layton as being similar in this way. They both have a Mediterranean focus, whether we're talking about Egypt, Israel, Greece, and for Irving Layton, that would also include Spain and Italy. But that whole region of the foundation of civilizations and religions, and so on, and not to mention myth or so-called myth. And how important that was for her, and how she invests her poetry with that ancient mythological sensibility, which I think is also can be connected to Northrop Frye and all of his thinking and teachings and so on about the foundations of literature. But anyway, to come back to the point, the music, I think, is just really effective in evoking that search, as you said, James, for that meaning inside ourselves. Before we go on, I'd like to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, saying a little bit more about the Pandemic Songbook. And I do like that title. I think it's super appropriate.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have to echo what Dee Dee said earlier. It was really a lifeline artistically and in terms of connecting with people to be part of these ongoing recitals online and sometimes in person, and to be creating these songs sometimes to poets whose words I had never come across before, but invariably there were treasures that were uncovered. So yeah, I thank George especially, and to those of us. Artists and listeners who've been along for the ride. The CD is in process. In fact, it's pretty much mostly done. There's still some work to do, but it's the tentative release date is late August. So look for it then. Word will go out. And in fact, there is a launch event which coincides with a concert, two concerts actually, the same program, October 13th and 14th by Confluence Concerts. That will be at Heliconian Hall in Toronto. And again, word will go out about that. And yeah, there are about 19 songs, I think, all told. They sort of piled up. And some marvelous singers. The lead singer pretty much is Alex Samaras, a Toronto singer, a wonderful guy, a wonderful singer, very expressive. And I wrote many of the songs with him in mind. He didn't realize that. Later on, he sang them. He's done a beautiful job. And two other wonderful singers, Andrew Adrich, a Toronto opera singer, and Jeremy Dutcher, who is from the East Coast, Wolastoqiyik nation. And they have both done wonderful jobs too. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled.
And before we go on, I'll just say very quickly that this whole project started because you were so keen to do that little Christmas present for me to Giovanna, taking her song, as it turned out, her poem Namesake, and making it into a song and surprising her with it. And then we all, I think I can say, we all loved it so much that we thought, hey, let's keep on bringing poets and composers together. Like yourself and the many poets that you've worked with now over the last couple of years, and I'm loving it all. All of it is like just the greatest thing,
Yeah.
and I really do think that the pieces that you've composed are formidable. They are just fantastic, and everybody who gets a chance, who's lucky enough to have a chance to listen to that CD when it's ultimately released, or to get to the concerts at the Heliconian Hall, they're going to find them memorable and probably life-changing, and a complete and rich defense against the ravages of COVID. Forever and forever and forever. I'll say that.
Yeah, don't forget to get your vaccinations regardless. But yeah, if you come to the concert, you'll be doubly, proof against COVID. But thanks, George. I appreciate it. And it's been a gas for me as well.
Thank you, James. We are going to now hear from the poet Stephen Morrissey, who is based in Montreal. And Stephen has written some of the most delicate and moving, impressively emotive love poems that I have come across in all of the Canadian scene, English Canadian scene. He's published 12 books of poetry as well as literary criticism. Farewell Darkness Selected Poems is forthcoming this year. So that's very magical, very important to note. Stephen Morrissey married poet Carolyn Zanilo in 1995, and he has a website. You can visit him very easily at www.stephen, spelled P-H, Stephen, Morrissey, Morrissey.ca. So www.stephenmorrissey.ca, and you can find his website that way. And so I'll invite Stephen to read a few poems, and we'll end, or he'll end his reading with "Asleep in Her Arms," which has been scored by James Roll.
Well, thank you, George. You can hear me?
Oh, yes.
Okay. I don't trust technology. I'm George and everybody else, Giovanna, I'm having a wonderful time at this reading. Really enjoying everything, the music, the poetry, the works. And you had James write music for one of my poems. And as you said, I'll read that in a few minutes. But I really have to thank James and you for that. It's a beautiful thing, a beautiful gift that you've given me. And your introduction was excellent, really good. So I'll read just 3 poems. The first is Her Red Duffel Coat. Her red duffel coat lies on a hall bench. The coat is a pile of cloth without the presence of her body in the coat. Her red duffel coat is cold without her animating spirit. It is a limp rag, less each day without her wearing the coat to give it reason to exist, to give the coat a life force, which is love. The coat's sleeves hang by its side. No embrace from this red coat. Without her wearing it, it's an empty shell. The coat is a prisoner of her love. When she wears the coat, it is not any coat, but hers. Oh, close-fitting coat, coat to surrender in, coat that makes me weep with loneliness. Seeing her red duffel coat, I am lonely for her. I would follow her, hide behind a wall to watch her in her red duffel coat, unself-conscious, a beacon of life, an affirmation of love. When she is gone, the coat and I are lifeless, distraught, and forgotten. Thank you, George. Thank you, everybody. The next poem is The Room of Love. We are eating supper at small wooden tables, the kind with folding legs that collapse to be stored when not used. I sit on the edge of the bed while you are on the love seat, only feet across from me, bundled in a maroon blanket, looking like the child you were, adorable at age 8, with feet not reaching the floor. The room is illuminated by a single 60-watt incandescent light bulb inside a brown lampshade, and the small black Grundig radio is tuned to Radio Classique from Ile Sainte-Hélène. It is this moment, sitting here, eating supper together, when the room seems the only place that exists. Outside these walls, there is outer space and darkness, stars, moons, planets, asteroids, comets, and black holes. And beyond space, God, angels, and saints join in a chorus of celestial music. But even God can't stop the slow turning wheels of endings and beginnings that remind us of our mortality. Only love seems to transcend time and space, and perhaps God stands in silence in the presence of love. Some lovers know the room of love, placed at the center of existence, and having visited this room, they know the meaning of life is fulfilled and nothing has been in vain.
Yeah.
And then, thank you. The third poem is a poem that was published, I guess, in the late 1990s, and in a chapbook. And George, you really salvaged this poem, because I had published these poems and I didn't really think all that much of them. And then, you made you're a very kind person, George. And you made a list of the poems from the chapbook. And so I had discarded these poems. A few of them will now be in this selected poems that's supposed to come out this year. And this poem is Asleep in Her Arms, which you also very generously had put to music. So here's the poem. Isn't this what I've waited for? To sleep in her arms, return to the warmth of a woman's body, curves and softness against bone and flesh. She is the one I come to life in, the woman whose presence returns me to life. There is no other like her, the one I love, the one who is my other half, the one whose hand I hold, the one whose company I desire, the one who makes the moon white and full. I think of other men alone at night. During the day, they search for a woman to bring them light. Love transforms, ignites an inner fire, burns long and bright in the human heart. What makes the full moon white and round but love? What makes the trees grow and the fields green with life? Only love. Or the river flow, fish breaking the calm surface at dusk, sky red with setting sun and grass cold with dew.
Oh, it's marvelous. Marvelous.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I love the simplicity of the language. And despite the simplicity of the language, there's this vastness of feeling that rises out of those images. And it strikes me as Yeatsian, it's Celtic, it's just large with feeling, that despite the fact that the language is so elemental and touching. I'm thinking about that line about God must be silent, standing in the presence of love. Come on, that's amazing.
God.
Wow. I'll ask Giovanna if you have anything that you'd like to add.
The thing about Stephen's poems are that there's such a presence that is genuine. They feel so true, but this strong presence is there in your poems, and they're full and embodied. And so inspired was I by that lovely poem of yours that I read in one of your books. I think it was called "My Russian Wife." Do you remember?
Yeah, I do.
And it inspired me to do a version of it. Of course, I gave you credit, Pacha, right? And I wrote one of my own love poem modeled on that, which is, I consider it very good, thanks to you. Yeah, congratulations.
Well, thank you both. I appreciate it.
And so now let's have James and Juliet go to work.
Work. Here we are. So this is the song Asleep in Her Arms. Words by Stephen Morrissey and music by myself, James Rolfe. Isn't this what I've waited for? To sleep in her arms, return to the warmth of a woman's body, curves and softness against bone and flesh. She is the one I come to life in, the woman whose presence returns me to life. There is no other like her, the one I love, the one who is my other half, the one whose hand I hold, the one whose company I desire, the one who makes the moon white and full. I think of other men alone at night. During the day they search for a woman to bring them light. Love transforms, ignites an inner fire, burns long and bright in the human heart. What makes the full moon white and round but love? What makes the tree grow, and the fields green with life, only love. O'er the river flow, fish breaking the calm surface at dusk, sky red with setting sun, and a grass cold with dew. Only
Woo! That is fantastic.
Thanks.
Oh
George.
my golly. I have to say, when sometimes I hear that song, it brings tears to my eyes. It really does. Shivers down my spine, tears to my eyes. Most definitely. I mean, the feeling, James, that you bring out in that piece is it's just incredible. I'm just going to ask you and Stephen just to talk together about how you did this.
Well, I guess I can start in the sense that the poem, as often is the case, George has presented me with probably about 8, 10, or 12 poems to choose from, and this one was the one that spoke clearest to me, musically speaking. And I think it is because of what George and Giovanna mentioned before. There was a truthfulness about the feeling, simplicity, directness, that I thought this is the real thing. And I really loved how they, these are big subjects, love, and somehow it rang true. That's really what I can say, and the music flowed because of that.
I think you captured the fulsomeness of love. Right? It's very, very broad and big. Yeah, beautiful, Jane.
Thanks.
Well, James, I really love what you've done. I'm really impressed. And George salvaged this poem. I had, as I said, discarded it pretty much or forgotten about it. And you've really given it a new life and a different life than I mean, it's out there in the world now. It's not mine. I actually don't feel any connection to the poem in a way. But I really I've heard you perform it now twice. And I'm impressed both times, and even I'm singing it in my mind. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks. That's wonderful. And it's really a lesson for us artists, poets, and musicians that we have no idea of the effect of what we do. The poem or the song is, like you say, it's not ours. It goes into the world, makes its own way, hits people or doesn't hit people, or it bounces off someone into someone else's ear. Whether it's a direct hit or an indirect hit, we just don't know. And that's the amazing and mystical thing about communicating and connecting through art.
It is.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to agree with what James. The artist creates something, and then I mean, this has been said many times before, but the artist creates it, lets it go, and who knows what effect it will have in the world, and it has a life of its own. It's it's gone. And as I said, I had discarded, I'd put it aside. I had filed it away. And then you've revived it, and George has revived it. And I'm not, I don't, I may be the author, but I don't feel that I'm really all that involved in the creation of it. I'm listening to it as a new creation that you've made. And I'm really impressed. It's very simple language in the poem, but as we were saying before about the mot juste that Pound talked about, it's not something, and I think Giovanna said this. It's not something you just pull out of a hat. It takes decades to write in a simple way, to get the exact word, to to get exactly what you want to say. And I guess that applies to music. I mean, it must apply to music as well. It's decades of practice. And I think Leonard Cohen said that about his song Hallelujah, that he wrote it very fast, but really it was 25 years, of fiddling and of working on it.
There are 50 boxes in his archives just dedicated to that.
Wow. Well, that's incredible.
It is so wonderful to hear this song again, to hear the Gwendolyn McEwen piece "Water" again, to have the debuts that we've heard, Pavan for Georgie, and of course the full production of the Father's Dream. And what it makes me think right now is something I share with my creative writing students, is something that you have both just said, Stephen and James, and that is that we can never know who our work is going to touch or reach. We just don't know. And it's our job to create, and then wherever it ends up, it's impossible to predict. And one is constantly astonished to see the seed that one has planted with a poem or a piece of music, and it suddenly has flowered into some amazing creation. But wow, thank you both for this. And I know I'm always bad with paying attention to time, but we do have to do a little bit of paying attention to time. So I'm going to pivot now but I don't have to go very far from James to reach Juliet, who is right there beside James. And so we are very, very lucky, and I'll say more about Juliet in a moment, but very, very lucky to have you, Juliet, here playing the piano for us. But you are also a phenomenal composer, as we are going to be hearing in a moment. But it's also incumbent upon me at this time to mention Armand Garnett Ruffo, and who are very privileged to have Armand with us this evening, poet, writer, and English professor at Queen's University. His research and writing intersect creatively with his Ojibwe culture. He recently completed co-editing a new edition of, drumroll, the Oxford, I said Oxford Anthology of Indigenous Literature, and a few years ago co-edited an anthology of Indigenous literary criticism in Canada. He's published a wide-ranging book of poetry called Treaty Number Sign. Because he works in both scholarly and creative fields, he strives to bring both of these elements into the classroom, particularly as it relates to teaching creative writing. I also want to add that Armand has been a trailblazer in terms of taking persons who are really important to Indigenous creative history, even someone, the interloper, so to speak, like Gray Owl, and writing poems about his life and its meaning, especially for Indigenous peoples. And also the Thunderbird poems about the great artist Norval Morrisseau, and really bringing that particular great artist to life in full figure, so to speak, in terms of his connections to his own Indigenous heritage, but also his attraction to mystical belief systems. And it's a very engaging, very rich book of poetry. And I'll also add that I was very privileged and honored to have a chance to read alongside yourself, Armand, in Montreal on a very cold January night in 2016. But anyway, thank you so much for being part of our program tonight. And looking forward to hearing your poetry. And then, of course, we will hear Juliet's composition for your poem, and at that point we'll say a little bit more about you, Juliet, and then hear the song actually sung by James. And I got to say very quickly as well that James, you really started to sing when we were working on these pieces. You started to sing, and all of a sudden you're a singer, man. Wow, it's amazing. And just a couple more things about Armand. He's also written a libretto for a musical called Sounding Thunder, the song of Francis Pagamagabo. Thank you, Armand, thank you. Which is based on the real life experiences of an acclaimed Ojibwe World War I sniper. And nominated for the Governor General's Literary Award for Poetry, as was your work on Norval Morrisseau. And in 2020, you were the winner of the Lackner Writers Trust Poetry Prize. Ladies and gentlemen, Armand Rupo.
I'll introduce myself. Kishkweke Deshnaka, Sanin, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here at George. I still remember 2016. We had a wonderful time, and I hope we can do that again. So I will keep this short then. I'll read two new poems from this anthology that's hot off the press. It's the 100th anniversary. I don't know if you can see it. Arc Magazine. Let's see. I don't know. Yeah, there you go. You just sent me this a couple of days ago, so I thought I'd read two of the poems that they published. And 100th anniversary. Wow, like that's 1923. So Duncan Campbell Scott was publishing in that at that time. So that, for me, that's like, so anyway, I'm really happy they published this poem, and it's from a suite of unpublished poems. Most of my poems are unpublished. It's just the way it is. So here's a poem called Resting. And Resting is based on the children who were missing from residential schools. And I happen to grow up in a town that Chapleau had a residential school, and our First Nation did ceremony because there was children found just near the residential school between the railroad tracks and the highway. So this poem came out in some other poems. They're called Resting, and this poem is called Resting 2. Number 2. See the hidden graves between the trees, the unmarked ones, the ones that will be forever nameless. The children are resting, as if each child were tucked in with a lullaby, a teddy bear, a goodnight kiss. It isn't true. Where do the lies come from? They are not resting. Though we do what we can for them, pray, sing, put down tobacco, burn sweetgrass and sage, watch little hearts of smoke curling up towards the sky. Listen, they are below our feet. Can you hear them? Their tiny bones are turning as we speak, turning to dust, turning to soil, turning to plants and animals, in turn, turning. Look there, carefully, over by that mound, barely noticeable under the damp leaves. You can see their thin arms, tendrils of green, reaching, twisting, pushing up through the earth. Another concern of mine, of course, is the environment, and this is called Whale. What will we say about you when you are gone? Will we say that in your dominion you were royalty, majestic in your element, elemental in your nature? Will we shroud your passing in requiem and sing that you were the one who would rise like an aqueous star, explode and then instantly plunge fathoms below where stillness bubbled creation? Will we write that you were the stuff of story by ambitious authors who dreamed you in black ink, pitting you against the darkest shadow of humanity? Will we lament that you were such a godly sight to behold, riding light as a tall ship rides a wave, though with far more grace and ease, for you were both light and wave? Will we say in our unending shame, in the end you became but an object, a cartoon absence, sprouting water up to balloon clouds forever and never to be witnessed again? Will we? And so I'll read now the poem that Juliet has composed for. And the poem, I'm always writing and rewriting, so I actually rewrote a little bit of this poem for her, but I'll read the original here. So a poem, who said it, is never finished. One can rewrite and rewrite and keep it going. So this is called A Wise Man Once Told Me. And the original is for Wilfred Pelche. When the knock comes to your door, will you be there to answer it? We have been undressing too long. It is time to put our clothes back on. You take the water that is still and the water that flows and all the things in the water. Bring them back here within you where they belong. You take the land and the rocks and the trees and all those animals and insects who live in those forests. You bring all that back too inside of you. Then you take the birds, the air, the clouds, the stars, the sky, and the whole universe. That too belongs inside of you. And then you take all the people in the world and every language in the world and bring that too back inside of you where it rightfully belongs. When you have done that, you will be fully clothed, and each foot will know exactly where to fall, and you cannot make a mistake. When the knock comes to your door, you will be there to answer it. Miigwech, thank you. Juliet, I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, it's on her way.
As Juliet approaches the keyboard, I do have to say a little. I got to introduce Juliet Palmer. So her music has found its way to a highway off-ramp, a swimming pool, a boxing ring, and to concert halls across North America, Europe, and Oceania. From Aotearoa, New Zealand. I know I didn't say that right, Juliet. Juliet makes her home right here in Toronto. A pianist and composer. Her performance of this piece by Armand Garnett Ruffo, and then later, a little bit later, by Yasheen Turner, represent the first commissions from me to her to join our musical family, so to speak, with Dee Dee and James. And I'm extremely impressed by this work, and very, very happy to have Juliet, who's been performing in the Five Poets series throughout, playing piano, now being part of it as a composer. This is really great, and I look forward to seeing a CD from you, Juliet. I hope in the near future, and yeah, okay. And also, I should stop talking and let you play. But I will ask one question, which is, what attracted you to this particular piece by Armand?
That's a really good question. I love there's something optimistic about it, and like many people right now, wrestling with grief at the state of our planet, and it can feel overwhelming at times. So for me, this poem is an invitation to express gratitude for all the beings, the life on the earth, more than humans, and to connect with those life forms, and that is what makes us ready to answer the door. So I don't know if that's at all where Amon was thinking of this poem coming from. I don't know what the knock at the door is for you, but that's kind of what it was for me, to step up as a human, to be responsible and connected and grateful for the life that sustains all of us. Yeah.
Perfect.
When the knock comes to your door, you will not be there to answer it. We have been undressing too long. It is time to put our clothes back on. You take the water that is still. You take the water that flows. You take the life in the water, the fish and the frogs who sing their nightly song. Bring them all back here in you, where they belong. You take the land and the rock and the trees. You take all the beasts and the insects in the forests. You bring them all back to deep inside of you. You take the birds, the air, the clouds, the stars, the sky, and the whole wide universe, for that too belongs inside of you. And then you take all of the people in the world and every language in the world, and you bring that back to inside of you, where it rightfully belongs. When you have done that, you will be full comes to your door, you will be there to answer it.
Marvelous. Yes, marvelous. And Armand, I'm going to ask you to comment, please, if you may.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. Very I like it. I think it fits very well because the poem is gentle in a way, and I think the music is gentle in a way, and then also the music kind of like I hear rain and I hear all the kind of nature things going on in it. It's very nice.
Yeah, I was really feeling connected to water as I was writing. So
yeah.
that the different kinds of water, the still water, the running water, and then the way it opens up to the sky and then comes down to the earth. So it's got that big range musically as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, what can I say? It's lovely. It's really
I will say, I mean, it was interesting hearing you read tonight because I think it was even slightly different from what's in the published version of that poem. So and then I'm like, oh, I think I like the first line that you just did now even better. So I'm gonna have to change it again. But also, that I laugh because right at the end it says, "And you will not make a mistake." And I'm always making mistakes in this piece. As I wrote it, it's like at the limit of my piano playing ability. So I'm like, whoa. Anyway, we got through it.
Yeah, we go. It's good. It's lovely.
Yeah, very lyrical, magical, transcendent, moving. It's. I think it's a really wonderfully environmentally evocative, as our mom was just saying, and wow, a tremendous piece, and I really did hear the water, and I hear the water also in the piece that you've done, Juliet, for Yashin, and so I see that as usual we're running just a tiny bit late. Everybody, stay with us. We don't have too much more left in terms of our production this evening, but we do have the phenomenal Yashin Turner up next. And I'm just noticing Dee Dee writing about everyone to everyone, noticing the water, the birds, the knocking, and so on. I should be reading these notes at the bottom of the screen. I'm sorry I haven't done that. I've just been too caught up with trying to keep things going and talking too much at the same time. So I'm going to ask Giovanna to say a few words.
Tender. That's what I was thinking. As Armand was reading his poem, that poem had a lovely pacing to it and a layering in the way it built to the end. Beautifully done. And Juliet, I loved your work with that. It was delicate, really delicate and skillfully wrought. Congratulations to you both. Yeah. And I'm with you, Armand. I always change my poems. I went in to visit a creative writing class. They had some book, and I said, well, I brought a different version already of that.
There you go.
So I'm with you.
The temptation of endless revision. That's it. The search for our perfection. We will hear now from Yashin Turner. And so happy that, Yashin, that you're with us this evening, all the way from Las Vegas, New Mexico. Las Vegas, New Mexico, not Nevada, New Mexico. Just get it straight. Of course, I note that you do hail from Istanbul, Turkey. I've been fortunate enough in my life to have been there 3 times: 2003, 2006, 2009. And I must return. There's something very intoxicating about that city, and all the cultures that it represents and the merging of all these cultures. Anyway, You have a PhD in cultural anthropology from McGill University. You lived in Montreal, Canada between 1980 and 2000. You've published 2 short story collections, Orphaned by Halley's Comet and True Romance with a Sailor, a book of historical nonfiction. I'm already very intrigued by this historical nonfiction. I first came to know of your work 30 years ago because of your writing of The Book and the Veil, which is a work of historical nonfiction, an exploration of the tensions between Western-style feminism and Islam, and notions of the presentation of women in public or not, and the various philosophical and theological issues that come up in relation to that. And a work, when I read it, I actually reviewed it for Books in Canada. I know I gave it a good review, but it always stayed with me. It always stayed with me. It was always there in the back of my mind, still on my bookshelf. And I knew I had to go back to it. So I did. Anyway, you've also written a historical novel, Rembrandt's Model. And the excerpts that have been broken into song are from The Book in the Veil, and it has a subtitle, Escape from an Istanbul Harem, and published by Vehicle Press in Montreal, 1994. Since your retirement, which is the most beautiful R word. It's the most beautiful R. I'm looking at it up there, somewhere out there in the distance. I might get there. Our version of utopia, retirement. But since your retirement in 2018, you've been living in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and quietly working on your spiritual autobiography. So I'm going to invite you to recite some work, and then we'll end, or you'll end with the poem that taken from The Book and the Veil, Escape from an Istanbul Harem. And then we'll hear Juliet's rendition.
Well, thank you very much for this wonderful, wonderful presentation of me and my work. I'm really delighted, and I want to thank you, George, very much for finding me where I've been hiding, because I have a tendency to hide, and Las Vegas, New Mexico is one of those places you can hide, tucked away in the mountains, and it's the original Wild West town, and it still has that personality, and I just felt like this was a great place to be. And I've been here since 2005, actually. And I retired from the only psychiatric hospital that exists in New Mexico. I was working first as a forensic social worker, then as a clinical social worker and a treatment planner, because that's just one of those, careers I've had. But it was great, and that allowed me to retire earlier than most academics, because they tire you out so much, and you have to deal with so much that you could actually retire faster. But I was quietly writing and actually recuperating, and this was just great for you to pull me out of my really quiet state. So I'm gonna read this from The Book and the Veil, and I'm gonna then I'll read the poem that you actually pulled together from different parts of this book, and it's a beautiful poem. And first, I'm gonna read from this part where I have a memory of visiting Pierre Loti's cafe. I don't know if you've been there in Istanbul, but Pierre Loti is in the book, actually, but he was a French romantic writer that fell in love with Istanbul. And there is up on the hills of the Golden Horn, there is actually a cafe named after Pierre Loti, the writer. So let me try to find this piece here. Just 1 second. I have marked it. Here it is. So this is sort of in the middle of the book. And So here, this is one of those books where I love kinetic creations. This is one of those books that is meant to move, and it moves through back and forth from east and west, my memories, and the British suffragette Grace Ellison, the Turkish sisters that she communicates with. And those same Turkish sisters also communicated with Pierre Loti. So here it is about Pierre Loti's cafe and my memories. What am I to do with the memory of that solitary cafe on the hills of Eyüp, overlooking the dirty Golden Horn of my childhood? A rainy winter day in Istanbul. Was it just I and my father there after we had visited his mother's temporary grave nearby? My grandmother had died recently and was buried in a makeshift grave until space could be cleared in a proper cemetery next to her long dead husband. All I remember is a crooked headstone about to topple over my grandmother's grave, and my father saying that this was due to erosion from the rains. My mother used to criticize my grandmother for not being able to do anything right. Everything she did was crooked, according to her. I remember my mother being irritated by the crooked frames of the pictures on the walls of her mother-in-law's house. I couldn't help thinking that even her gravestone was true to her spirit, that some people's lives are crooked throughout, and maybe that's a fine way to be. And I wasn't sure even then how straight my life would be. Was it the cold rain or the children my age from the squatter houses playing in the mud and gathering around my father's old Opel station wagon? Or was it the crookedness that seemed to be taking over the whole world around me and the dirtiness of the Golden Horn that made Pierre Loti's cafe so enchanting? I remember a beautiful blue tile stove giving off heat and refined ladies serving me tea in elegant glasses on fragile saucers. Did those ladies belong to a Pierre Loti Friendship Society? Was there such a society? But then my father might have told me one more of his white lies. My father, the misinformed guide who always knew where to go in Istanbul. And perhaps it was better that way. Better to know Istanbul through my father's stories. I remember drinking tea with my father there, enchanted by my surroundings, a corner of Istanbul that had been preserved just the way Pierre Loti had liked it. I also remember thinking that Istanbul must be a beautiful place indeed, if a foreigner had liked it so much, and being a little confused about it all, because even at that age, all I dreamt about was running away from Istanbul. Who was this Pierre Loti whose cafe I liked more than I was to like his books? He used to write here, my father told me, and I thought, yes, I would like to write here too. So in many ways, I go back to Istanbul, even though I did want to run away from it so badly. But it is a beautiful city, and it's always staying with me. And I'm so delighted that you put together this beautiful poem that you just drew out from this book. And in doing so, you actually pulled me out of my seclusion, and I'm grateful for that. And here's this poem that Juliet's song is just so beautiful. And this is the song, this is the poem that it's based on. And okay, so now I, Yeshim, who's fled every office chaise from east to west, have sauntered east many times, a Turkish-born writer, Montrealese. I hear in Montreal, Istanbul's chimes, and recall instantly that Turks love the buttercup, narcissus, dandelions, and chamomile, all sprouting widely in Istanbul, all nonstop, all along the Bosphorus, whose waters rile houses lizarding hazardous banks. So mad floods wash out foundations. But the fixed standard of beauty in Istanbul is unpredictable moods of water, of women, and so love meanders. I think of Zainab, her eyes sleepy but not dull. She tells of opium pills that help mothers and wives pull through Ramadan, treat it as a lull, swallowing drugs sold in thin gold covers, hollowing pills with varying thicknesses of gold coating so that ladies could float above all cares for husbands, lovers, businesses, and even look down upon, frown upon love.
Yeah. I love that. I love the reading of that. It's a really powerful book. Escape from an Istanbul Harem, the book and the veil, and very, very smart with the literary criticism, the personal autobiographical, the philosophical ruminations on different attitudes towards modesty in quotation marks, as well as freedom, also in quotation marks.
Yes.
Yes,
there's a lot in here. It's a lot of friendship in here, as well as questioning. I'm glad that I'm part of this group of friends and this.
Yes, I just love that part where you're in the cafe and you like the cafe and better than his books. Right there. It's just so genuine.
His books are really cheesy. They really are, but I mean, they do give you a really good glimpse into that whole Orientalist mindset, and it's really it's wonderful to just get a true glimpse of that, because people actually lived it. They romanticized the East. They lived it. They lived these wild, imaginative truths that sort of made their lives much more interesting because they lived it. And yeah, he's interesting, definitely. But that cafe, I definitely encourage all of you to go there.
Yeah, and I also love the part about Ramadan with the women having their efforts there to get through.
Yes. They used to take these opium pills coated in different layers of gold, all different thicknesses. So like the thinner ones would just dissolve first, and then several hours later, the medium levels. And then it was the Ottomans had definitely, incredible inventions for just being able to stay, stay afloat, I guess.
Very practical. Very practical.
I want some of that myself.
I would take it too, George.
Instead of whatever gets you through the night, it's like whatever gets you through Ramadan.
That's right.
Mother's little helpers.
I don't think they're available now, though. This was
it's the establishment. They're always to blame.
Sorry to hearing Juliet. Yeah.
Okay.
The song.
And I want to thank you, Juliet, before you even, perform it. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I was very inspired by your poetry. So, and this is one section from a longer sequence too. So, yeah. You can unspotlight yourselves if you like. Or I'll do it for you. I'm secretly, doing these things behind the scenes. Great. Here we go.
Now I, Yashim.
Played the wrong
Start
note.
again.
Start again. Too excited.
Now I, Yeshim, who's fled every office shares, from east to west have sauntered east many times. A Turkish-born writer, Morales, I hear in Montreal, Istanbul's chimes. And recall instantly that Turks love the buttercup, narcissus, dandelions, and chamomile, all sprouting wildly in Istanbul, all non-stop, all along the Bosphorus, whose waters rise. Houses lizarding hazardous banks, so mad floods wash out foundations. But the fixed standard of beauty in Istanbul is unpredictable moods of water, of woman, and so love meanders. I think of Zainab, her eyes sleepy but not done. She tells of opium pills that helped mothers and wives pull through Ramadan. Treat it as a love, swallowing drugs sold in thin gold covers, hollowing pills with varying thicknesses of gold coating, so that ladies could float above all cares for husbands, lovers, businesses, and even look down upon, frown upon
Ah. Mm. Wow.
Wow, Juliet, that was great.
Oh, gorgeous.
Lovely,
Really,
thank you.
really complex.
Oh my golly.
Yeah.
And I just have to say, James, your voice is perfect.
Yes, yes, it is.
It's just perfect.
He belongs
Yeah.
in the Istanbul harem.
Yeah.
What can I say?
Yeah.
Sounds all right.
Instead of escaping from, you're breaking into. Oh man, Juliet, it's an amazing piece. It really is. I love all the modulations and emotions and moods through it. Yeah, Michael.
Yes, I felt like it was so true to the spirit of Istanbul and the Bosphorus that just sort of, it was perfect. And I don't think you've been there, Juliet, right?
I
Or
haven't
how-
been there. No, I've been to Syria. I've not been
Yeah.
to. It's almost not quite, but no.
But you really
When's
capture
it?
the soul and the spirit of Istanbul and the Bosphorus flowing and how, one does flow both in reverie and in just, in life. And you have to in Istanbul, even though it's so crowded now. There's still that element of just incredible, like flow movement. Even in the crowds, you feel it, but you certainly feel it by the Bosphorus. So
Right.
that's beautiful.
You also captured a little bit of the moody darkness.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I was very. I mean, I was taken aback. We've talked about it already, but this idea of getting through Ramadan by just sort of floating above it, using
And the weight,
to
yeah.
take you to another place. So that was sort of throughout the whole piece. That was kind of what was feeding me musically. I think. Yeah.
Brava, brava.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I love it. I just think that, and yeah, it's just like it just captures this mood of escape,
Yes.
and relief and release, and I think that yeah, it's a really gorgeous piece, and James's singing just just puts me in that state of being of taking hashish.
Yes.
I need to get some of that.
It's the healthy alternative. Like cure the pandemic, like,
Yeah.
relaxing you clearly.
Very medicinal.
Tonic.
Let me tell you
It is
that
medicinal. That's what's true.
Oh golly.
Wait, George, let me just say that George came up one day and he said, well, now I'm going to have a piece by Yeshim Turner. And I said, well, who is she? Right? He said, well, I don't think she's really written much for this many. And she's living in Las Vegas. He thought it was Nevada at that point. She's Turkish. And, and I thought, well, how did she come to mind? Right? Because all of a sudden, like he's working on this project and he pulls these names out. Some of them I know, but then, others, I have no idea how they come to his mind, right? And so there you popped up, right? And so I'm glad that he got you out of your seclusion there and you were able to join us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh yeah. I can't wait to get the CD now. All right, so we that's just gotta happen. Wow. Okay. Well, I am notorious for.
Juliet, that's wonderful work. Wonderful work.
Yes.
I'm sending you a Barbie.
Barbie.
Oh, never mind. You'll find out.
Yeah. We are over time again. We always are over time. And I apologize to everybody for that, but I want to thank everyone for sticking with us, even though we've gone over time again. But we are going to conclude shortly with a very, very special reprise performance by Vanessa Wang. And I'll remind you all about Vanessa. We have Giovanna and I met her in Aurora, where we were all taking part in a song and poetry celebration in early January of this year, and she has dedicated herself. Vanessa has dedicated herself as a young Canadian singer, songwriter, and musician to addressing issues of social justice or injustice, and came first to my attention because I was made aware of the fact that she had written a song based on my book, While It Falls, which I have here with me, first published in 1990, and which Vanessa studied in high school, and she wrote a song called "The Ballad of Wyla Falls," and it's about or based on a poem I wrote, which I call "The Ballad of Othello Clemens," and it's about the murder of this character Othello. And by essentially due to racist machinations, you can tell that that's going to come up because I call the guy Othello, so there's got to be some kind of racist element in terms of his murder. And before I recite the poem and then invite Vanessa to share her song with us, her wonderful song with us, I do want to mention the fact that the woman who was at the center of the events that led to the lynching of Emmett Till in 1955 just died today. She was, I think, in her 90s or 88, somewhere. I think she might have been 88 years old. Her surname was Bryant, Bryant. And she touched off the events that led to the torture and grisly murder of a 14-year-old boy, African American, visiting from Chicago to Mississippi, because apparently when he was purchasing some candy at this store in Mississippi, he either whistled at her or he simply did not say anything other than thank you. And he didn't act, basically, he did not act with deference as he was supposed to this white Southern woman. And so she became upset by that. And so she prodded her husband and brother-in-law and other relatives, male relatives, to go and grab Emmett Till out of his bed in the middle of the night and murder him through great torture. And he was so badly disfigured that when his body was prepared for burial, his mother insisted on an open casket so that everyone could see what had happened to her son. Again, he was only 14 years old. Whether he whistled at her or not, or whether he was simply, in her mind, insolent in terms of not treating her with due deference. In any event, I'm sorry to bring that up, except that the Ballad of Othello Clemens is, in a sense, my own version, Nova Scotian version of similar events that happened there. So here's the poem, and then I'll invite Vanessa to do her song. There's a black wind howling by Wyla Falls. There's a mad rain hammering the flowers. There's a shotgunned man moldering in petals. There's a killer chuckling to himself. There's a mother keening her posied son. There's a joker ambling over his bones. Go down to the Sisebou River, hear it cry, Othello Clemens is dead and his murderers free. Oh, sang from Wyla Falls and lived by sweat, walked that dark road between desire and regret. He pitched lumber, crushed rock, calloused his hands. He wasn't a saint, but he was a man. Scratch Seville shot him and emptied his skull, tore a hole in his gut only death could fill. Now his martyr mother witnesses in cries over his corpse, cankered white by lilies over his corpse, cankered white by lilies. There's a black wind snaking by Wyla Falls. There's a river of blood in Jarvis County. There's a government that don't know how to weep. There's a mother who can't get no sleep. Go down to the Sisebou, hear it moan like a childless mother, far, far from home. There's a change that's gonna have to come. I said, a change that's gonna have to come. Thank you. And now, thank you all so very, very much. And here we are. We are at the great, brilliant climax of our evening. with Vanessa Wang and her great song, The Tragedy of Wyla Falls.
Thank you so much. And I am so honored, really, to be closing off the evening. I just want to say I've enjoyed everybody's poetry and songs so much. It's been such an inspiring and wonderful evening, especially after a long week, being able to sit here on a Friday evening and listen to everyone's performances and pieces. It's been wonderful. And so I hope you enjoy my song. Take me down to the Wyla Falls, a chronicle meant to appall. A mother cries for a brother dies. It ought to make you wonder why a man who plays guitar, singing songs beneath the sun, to be proud of who you are, it gets the outcome of a hating gun. So take me down to the Wyla Falls, a chronicle meant to appall. A mother cries for a brother dies. It ought to make you wonder why now they've taken another one. A change is gonna have to come. We remember him forever on the tragedy of Wyla Falls. Well, your life had only started. Now you live on in my heart, and it's only in our fate to be beautiful beyond the endless pain. Well, this never is goodbye, for the music never dies. We've been shattered by these lies, so we are but dust and still we rise. So take me down to the Wyla Falls, a chronicle meant to appall. A mother cries for a brother dies. It ought to make you wonder why now they've taken another one. A change is gonna have to come. We remember him forever on the tragedy of Wyla Falls. We remember him forever on the tragedy of Wyla Falls. Thank you so much. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yes, I was muted, but let me unmute myself. Wow, that was fantastic. Thank you, Vanessa.
Yeah.
And of course, we'll be hearing you tomorrow. I'll make the announcement now that there's Giovanna, myself, Vanessa, Honey Novik, and a whole host of other performers will be taking part in the socialist. Did I say socialist? Socialist! Holy smokes! Socialist action! Socialists doing action! Anyway, I'm so happy to know that
May Day. It's for May Day.
it's for May Day, yeah, but it's tomorrow night at the Free Times Cafe. But I'm so sorry that we are coming to an end of this.
That's a wonderful song.
It is.
Melody, you're singing, gorgeous.
Thank you.
Yeah. I don't even know where to start. In fact, I should just let Giovanna, close us off this evening after having heard this brilliant song by Vanessa. And you have, Vanessa, tremendous stage presence already. And I know that you will be able to command audiences anywhere, whenever you decide to take the stage, anytime. So we are really honored to have you with us this evening as well. I am noticing the time.
So we're just going to thank everybody. Really, what a spectacular evening it's been. All the poets and the composers, James, Juliet, Dee Dee, and Vanessa, of course. The musicians, the music's gorgeous. The poetry was fabulous. And George, you were your usual exuberant self. And so, what can I say? A stellar evening with monstrous talent.
Monstrous.
And we want to thank Yang over there at the East-West Learning Connections and for sponsoring us again. And everybody was just, really wonderful and present and very.
Thank you very much. Thank you, George.
Thank you.
George,
For organizing this.
Bye.
yeah,
Thank you, everyone.
It's so good to have you with us, really.
Yeah, and see you again in the not too distant future for the CD launches that we've heard about tonight. And I just want to say once again how privileged I am. We are to be in the company of so many truly stellar performers and artistes. I deliberately say it in the French way because I do think that you are artistes and have shared with us the bounty of your incredible gifts, your incredible talents. And I, Giovanna can speak for herself, but I know that, well, I will say, I mean, we both are just always transformed by these experiences, by these moments of hearing your art, hearing your music, hearing your voices, hearing your songs.
I find them so inspiring and heartfelt that sometimes I listen to one of them before I teach meditation.
Yeah, this is a
and Yeshem, it's so great to have you here from the exotic Las Vegas, wherever. And Stephen, thank you, Stephen, for joining us.
You're all welcome here.
We're coming to you.
A quick shout out to my old friend Dale West. Thank you, Dale. Yes, you were here for the eye candy. starting with me. I'm just kidding, of course. Anyway, great to see you, Dale, and we'll be talking soon. I love you all. Most sincerely. Happy May Day.
Thank you very much.
Happy May Day. Thank you again.
Thanks again, George. I'll see you in Toronto. Hopefully sometime soon.
Thank you, Dee.
We must meet up.
Yeah, nice to meet everybody. And to see
Okay,
everybody.
good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Yeah.
Right. Oops.